This is Amanda Dawn Christie telling you that if you're interested in radio, AM, FM, shortwave, amateur radio, pirate broadcasting, and more, you won't want to miss the International Radio Report every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and online at ckut.ca.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, January the 5th, 2025, our first show of the new year. We hope you had a good holiday and a good, happy new year. We will be with you, of course, every week, same time, same station throughout 2025. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill, and we have some stories from the shortwave world. We have an obituary and a story out of Africa for you, and as usual, the upcoming ham radio contests and events. So we'll get going first with an announcement about an annual event that's been going for many, many years, and that is what was once called the Winter SWL Festival. It has now been changed to just the SWL Fest because it will no longer be held during the winter. We've received this from Richard Cuff, who is one of the organizers with the North American Shortwave Association, who put together the annual event. So the 2025 SWL Festival will be taking place April the 25th and 26th of 2025. He goes on to say, we scheduled the 2024 festival with very short notice last year and wound up with the fest on Mother's Day weekend. While we succeeded in moving the fest away from the dicey late winter weather that had plagued the Philadelphia region, we know we missed out seeing many folks in person because they had scheduling conflicts. We've decided we like the spring time frame for the fest, so we selected a weekend that keeps us clear from April 15th, Tax Day in the U.S., as well as Mother's Day. The dates are highlighted in the headline above, April the 25th and the 26th. We will be keeping the same venue, the Holiday Inn and Suites in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania, as the location worked well for us last year. As was the case last year, we will need to cap in-person participation to ensure we don't overload the meeting rooms, though it turned out we didn't hit our on-site maximum last year. With better advance notice, we're expecting more in-person participation. So this event is once again going to be a hybrid event. There will be an in-person element in Pennsylvania, in near Philadelphia, and there will be the online Zoom element of the event. Richard goes on to say that they will be gradually updating the website, which is SWLfest.com. And event registration will be opened at a later date. Right now, they're looking at sometime in February to get the registration open. And he says, look for more information in February 25. But in the meantime, mark your calendar with those dates of April the 25th and the 26th. And keep an eye on that website, SWLfest.com. So there'll be a lot more information coming out as to what events will be taking place, who the guest speakers will be, all the details of whether you want to go in person, hotel information and all of that sort of thing, registration fees, and also we'll have all the information on the Zoom part of the event. Glad to see it's happening again. It will be available to everyone, being a hybrid event, and as soon as we have more details, we'll pass those along to you.
That sounds good. It's going to be interesting once again. It's always an event I'm looking forward to. And we had a couple of ideas that we'll eventually talk about that probably will be making even maybe a little more content and diverse content. So we'll see what is going to happen with all of that.
We should mention the SWL in the title of the event. In most cases, for those who know, refers to shortwave listening.
Yeah.
This is far from just a shortwave event, though, and people who are into other elements of radio, whether it's amateur radio, utilities, pirates, medium wave DXing, FM, scanning, whatever. It's really all about all types of radio, not just shortwave listening. So the scope is quite broad, not just focusing on one element of the things that we do.
So we have some news of a possible closure of Voice of Turkey. This is via Alan Rowe, Teddington, UK, and it started showing up on the different, especially on the World of Radio I.O. group with Glenn Hauser, where a lot of people are starting to get worried. So it was announced in Sunday's letterbox broadcast on Voice of Turkey that TRT may be going off air. I have now just received this email from the Voice of Turkey. Thank you for your email, and we appreciate your concern regarding some changes at the Voice of Turkey radio going forward. We are currently undergoing a reorganization process, and we were told that TRT's all foreign broadcasts, Voice of Turkey radio, multiple language websites, and podcasts will be consolidated under one roof called TRT Global, which will be launched soon. In this new structure, Voice of Turkey English shortwave broadcasts will be handled by the TRT World channel in Istanbul. We, as the Voice of Turkey English desk, will not be going on the air. We will be in charge of translating and presenting several podcast series, which will be available through our newly planned online platforms. About the Voice of Turkey English shortwave transmissions to be carried by TRT World, in the new term, no date has been set. We really have no idea what type of programming there will be. TRT Voice of Turkey Arabic will face the same fate. But all other languages remain on the shortwave, and there might be new ones in the new term. I am personally sad about all of this, but I still hope that it will be turned around at some point. You never know. We remain contactable, and there's actually an email that you can send any info, anything. Let them know you're out there. It's very important. englishdesk at trt.net.tr. And this is where you can send an email. Let them know you're listening. If you're out there, they don't know if you never contact them. And sometimes this actually has been important. Some broadcasters have reversed some decisions over time, thanks to the fact that people wrote in. Let them know. Do write in. It's very important. So it seems we can only wait and see what happens, but things don't bode well. So people have been following the broadcasts online. I've seen that some people were actually saying that they were receiving some of the broadcasts. With additional info here that several reports have been posted on shortwave discussion groups and in I.O. and Facebook groups that English programming on Voice of Turkey frequencies now seems to be coming from the TRT World English service, which definitely is a different beast. It doesn't sound the same. It doesn't have the same, Voice of Turkey shortwave type broadcasting. Seems to come more from whatever is the home, world TV service in English. So that, of course, will differ in programming, but at least they're still on, and we'll continue monitoring the situation. I think it's important to see. And don't forget, very important, englishdesk at trt.net.tr. Write to them. Let them know you're out there.
It seems some of the reports I was reading of the content of the TRT World English service doesn't really focus a lot on Turkey. It's giving international news, stories from the Middle East and other parts of the world. It's almost like just a news service, a regular news programming of things going on everywhere, not just focusing on their own country as what we were getting from their own shortwave broadcasts. So it is a major change. I guess it's not really surprising. It's happened in so many other countries with their international broadcasting services. But at least there's some confidence knowing that language services seem to be remaining, and even talking about possible new ones. And it'd be interesting to see what might come out of that. We don't hear very often about stations adding additional language services like that. We move on to Obituary, and this has been getting a lot of coverage. The headline comes from an interesting site called Deadline. They actually gather information on people that have passed away, famous people, give you background information, a lot of details. So this one is about the much-loved BBC DJ Johnnie Walker, who has died. Johnnie Walker, one of the BBC's longest-serving radio DJs, has died. Walker died earlier in the week at 79 years of age following a long battle with lung disease, 2 months after calling time on his radio career. Tributes flooded in from BBC top brass. Director General Tim Davie called Walker a pop radio pioneer and a champion of great music. He entertained millions of beloved listeners on the BBC across decades, most recently hosting 2 shows on Radio 2. No one loved the audience as much as Johnnie, and we loved him back. Walker spent the vast majority of his career with the BBC. Born Peter Waters Dingley in 1945, he landed his first role for BBC Radio 1 in April 1969. After stints in local radio, he returned to the BBC in the late 1980s and was given a weekly show on Radio 2 in 1998. He presented many shows in the years following, landing a loyal audience base for Sounds of the 70s and The Rock Show, and proving to be hugely popular. His final Sounds of the 70s came in October, a few months after it was announced that Walker was terminally ill. So we'll have some tributes from various people within the BBC and others after we take our break for news of what's happening on the sun.
So the sun this week woke up in a major way. Lots of sunspot groups have started flaring with huge flares, X-class solar flares, some of the strongest that the sun can produce. And in return, it also made a lot of coronal mass ejections that some were kind of gathering together to create on New Year's a pretty big solar storm. Actually, there was auroras visible all the way down to Mexico. So it was a very powerful G4 class storm that happened. So if you didn't have any fireworks or anything special in your part of the world for New Year's, well, there was a natural display, a good one too. Now, what's happening is that other X-class flares have happened in the past couple of days, which also in turn means that more possibility of some geomagnetic storming coming up. One of the biggest sunspots, 3947, is the one creating most of the X-class flares, and it seems that it will continue flaring possibly today. And of course, that also means let's check out what's going to happen this week, as other flares might happen, and possibility of geomagnetic storming once again. The sunspot number 190, the solar flux 200. And of course, this means that conditions will be up and down when of course geomagnetic storms happen. Conditions are usually not as good, but sometimes it shifts the propagation in different ways. So it's always worth checking out and listening to the bands. So sometimes you'll hear signals you never noticed before, never heard, especially on a medium wave band. This band is particularly affected when there's geomagnetic storms and solar flares. So the only way that you can witness all of this and tune around those unusual signals, well, it's to turn on a radio and listen.
I'm Brian Penny of Brewster, Massachusetts. You're tuned to the International Radio Report. 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
So we have some tributes that have come in to the disc jockey Johnnie Walker, who, by the way, was a member of the British Empire. And the tributes are via the BBC. Begin with Tiggy Walker, Johnnie's wife, says, I couldn't be more proud of Johnnie, how he kept broadcasting almost to the end and with what dignity and grace he coped with his debilitating lung disease. He remained his charming, humorous self to the end. What a strong, amazing man. It has been a roller coaster ride from start to finish. And if I may say, what a day to go. He'll be celebrating New Year's Eve with a stash of great musicians in heaven. 1 year on from his last live show. God bless that extraordinary husband of mine who is now in a place of peace.
We also have Ellen Thomas, head of BBC Radio 2, that says, everyone at Radio 2 is heartbroken about the passing of Johnnie, a much-loved broadcasting legend. He made sounds of the 70s and the rock show appointments to listen to, sharing his personal memories and tales each week. He loved radio and inspired a generation of presenters, passionately promoting the artists and music he cared about so deeply. Johnnie Wry's sense of humor and his warm, open style of presenting ensured he was adored by his audience. The airwaves simply won't be the same again. He will be very much missed by Radio 2 presenters, staff, and listeners alike, and our thoughts are with his wife Tiggy and his children.
Lorna Clark, the BBC Director of Music, says Johnnie was a truly wonderful broadcaster and a devoted music fan. There was nothing he loved more than introducing new artists, such as the Eagles, Rod Stewart, Lou Reed, and Elton John in the early 70s on his Radio 1 show, which attracted millions of listeners. We're incredibly lucky to have had such a unique presenter as Johnnie on the BBC airwaves for so long.
Tim Davie, the BBC Director General, says, "We are deeply saddened by the news of Johnnie's passing, and our thoughts are with his family and friends, as well as everyone at Radio 2. Johnnie was a pop radio pioneer and a champion of great music, entertaining millions of beloved listeners on the BBC across decades, most recently hosting 2 shows on Radio 2. No one loved the audience as much as Johnnie, and we loved him back."
So we have a biography of Johnnie Walker. It's quite an impressive list of accomplishments. Johnnie Walker began his radio career in 1966 on Swinging Radio England, which was an offshore pirate station, before moving to the legendary Radio Caroline, becoming a household name by hosting a hugely popular nighttime show. After the closure of Radio Caroline, Johnnie joined the BBC Radio 1 in 1969, continuing until 1976, and establishing a reputation as a DJ who prioritized records above chat. On his lunchtime show, which he launched in 1971, he pioneered new names like Steve Harley, Lou Reed, Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, and Steely Dan. Pop the Question and Tuesday Chart Rundown were other well-remembered features of the show. Following his departure from Radio 1, he moved to San Francisco in 1976, where he recorded a weekly radio show which was broadcast on Radio Luxembourg. Johnnie returned home in the early 80s, and following stints with ILR Radio West and Wiltshire Radio in the West County, he returned to Radio 1 to present The Stereo Sequence in 1987. In the following years, he also presented shows on the new BBC local station BBC GLR and BBC Radio 5 Live. He then joined Radio 2 in 1997, presenting documentaries and depping for shows across the station, presenting his own Saturday afternoon show in 1998. Over 30 years of music knowledge was then channeled into Radio 2's Drive show from 5 to 7 p.m., which he hosted from 1999. In June 2003, Johnnie broke the news to his listeners that he had cancer and would be taking a break. He returned to the show in March 2004 with Eric Clapton's Hello, Old Friend. Johnnie left Radio 2 Drive in 2006 to present a new Sunday show on the station, whilst also depping for Terry Wogan on the Radio 2 Breakfast Show, as well as presenting station specials. That same year, he was awarded the Member of the British Empire in Her Majesty the Queen's New Year's Honours List of Service to Broadcasting, collecting his award from then Prince Charles. Johnnie went on to present 2 shows on Radio 2, Sounds of the 70s from April 2009, and The Rock Show, which Johnnie launched in 2018 with his first guest, Ozzy Osbourne. Johnnie's last episode of The Rock Show aired on Friday, the 25th of October, 11 p.m. to 12 a.m., and his final episode of Sounds of the 70s aired on Sunday, the 27th of October, from 3 to 5 p.m. On June the 10th, 2024, Johnnie and his wife Tiggy Walker appeared on the Jeremy Vine Show as part of a discussion around Carers Week on the program. Radio 2 will be paying tribute to Johnnie in the new year, and a collection of programs showcasing his life and career will be available in the BBC Sounds shortly. So that's a site online where you can go and listen to special broadcasts, historic broadcasts from the BBC in London.
So it's sad to hear the passing of these radio personalities that actually have made a real big impact over the air, over the years, and it's always sad to hear another one passing.
Coming from Radio Caroline and Pirate Radio, which the BBC just hated, to then becoming a real celebrity with the BBC for so long was kind of special as well. Now Radio Caroline is out there as a regular radio station with an official license and everything, so everything comes full circle, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
So take a listen to some of those BBC Sounds archives, and some pretty nice stuff there.
So in our next story, we have Agidigbo FM denies responsibility as death toll of the Christmas party hits 32. This is via Radio Info Africa. A local Nigerian radio station in Ibadan, Agidigbo 88.7 FM, owned by popular broadcaster Oriyomi Amsat, has denied organizing the Christmas party that claimed 32 lives. A stampede at the children's Christmas party held at the Islamic school in Basharon, Ibadan, left many dead and several others wounded. The radio station was reported to have organized the event in collaboration with the ex-wife of the Uni of Life, but the radio station said it only promoted the event as a media institution and was not part of its organizers. A press statement signed by its director of programs said the radio station was notified that a mammoth crowd had assembled at the venue of the event before 5 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and that they warned that additional people must refrain from going there. Amidst the tragedy, the news making the rounds that Agidigbo FM is the organizer of the Children's Fun Fair. However, the manager wishes to state that Agidigbo FM is not the organizer of the event, but one of the media outfits used to promote the events. The statement reads in part, "Upon receiving the notice that a mammoth crowd had assembled before 5 a.m. this morning at the venue, Agidigbo FM, the People's Voice used all media strategies to sensitize the population with jingles and public service announcements from that time that people should stop going to the venue of the fun fair. According to the station's director, it was not time to spread misinformation. The management of Agidigbo FM implored the general public to continue to pray for the speedy recovery of those in various hospitals and sympathize with the family of those who lost their lives. The Oyo State Police Command last Thursday said 35 children have been confirmed dead. This is just as it disclosed that 6 others were injured, while 8 people were arrested in connection with the unfortunate incident. Indeed, very sad, and even sadder when you think that it's children that were killed, and that hopefully they will take measures that this would not happen again.
Yeah, it's surprising that I'm not exactly sure what could have happened with that party, but you would certainly hope that somebody's going to take responsibility for it, and the radio station is trying to ensure that it wasn't them. But turning into a stampede was certainly a bad thing to happen.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
Coming up next weekend, we have first organized by the Indonesian Amateur Radio Association, the YBDX contest that will be running for 24 hours, 0000 to 2359 Zulu on January the 11th. It's a single sideband event, and the bands are 80 through 10 meters.
The Royal Belgian Amateur Radio Union is having the UBA PSK 63 Prefix contest, 1200 Zulu January 11th to 1200 Zulu January 12th. The mode is PSK63 only, bands 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters.
A major event is being organized by the National Contest Journal. It is the North American QSO Party, CW, 1800 Zulu January 11th through 0559 Zulu January the 12th. It is CW only, but it is running on all the HF bands, excluding the work bands. So that's 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters.
And let's remind everyone, when we talk about amateur radio contests, some of the listeners might be thinking, well, I'm not a ham. It's not for me. Well, even if you're not a ham, this is often a good time to listen to the amateur bands as a listener. And these contests are great for getting you stations and countries you never hear on the bands at the same time. So remember that this is as good and as interesting for a listener as for ham radio operators also.
A perfect example is that first contest we mentioned, the international event by the Indonesian Amateur Radio Association. I can't even remember if I've ever heard an Indonesian ham station on the air. So when there's an event like that in a country, there are going to be a lot of hams from that country on the air. So we'll give you an opportunity to see if you can hear someone from that country. These are good events to check out the performance of your antennas, to check out propagation, see if you can hear some of these signals. So there's a lot of benefits to these events, as Jill said, not necessarily having to be a ham to gain some benefit from them. So that's really why we include them on the show each week.
And so we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in. We will give you our contact information for email. radioreport@yahoo.com is our email address. You can listen to our show live streaming or archived at ckut.ca. We are on Facebook with a Facebook group, International Radio Report. You can join there. We have 967 members, pushing our way to that 1,000 mark. If you haven't joined, I encourage you to do so. Our YouTube channel has all of our shows up there for you to listen to at your convenience, including the latest ones, and you can go back and listen to some special shows that were only made for the YouTube channel as well. So that is at youtube.com/@IRR. And we do have an X account at IRRCKUT, and we invite you to follow us there. That does it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great start to 2025, and we look forward to our show again with you next week here on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
This is the North American service of Radio Moscow. At 03 hours UTC, we'll continue broadcasting in the 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, and 41-meter band short waves. That's the North American service of Radio Moscow in the 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, and 41-meter band short waves. Please